The movie begins 2 years after the events of Dawn of the Planet of the Apes. Caesar and his tribe of intelligent apes lie hidden in the woods seeking refuge from the human military faction led by the ruthless Colonel McCullough. The Colonel leads a group called Alpha Omega dedicated to eradicating the apes they view as a threat to humanity's survival. The war begins. The opening sequence shows an intense battle between the apes and Alpha Omega soldiers. The soldiers launch a surprise attack, but Caesar's strategic leadership allows the apes to defend their home successfully. The apes capture several human soldiers, including Donkey's apes who have betrayed their kind to serve humans in exchange for their lives. Despite calls for vengeance, Caesar shows mercy and releases the prisoners with a message for the Colonel: leave the apes in peace and the war can end. Tragedy strikes. Caesar's act of mercy backfires. The Colonel retaliates with a nighttime raid on Caesar's refuge, killing his wife Cornelia and eldest son Blue Eyes. Devastated and consumed by grief, Caesar sends his tribe to seek a new safe haven across the mountains while he embarks on a mission of vengeance to confront the Colonel. Accompanied by his loyal allies Maurice, Rocket, and Luca, Caesar journeys through dangerous terrain determined to end the conflict once and for all. Along the way, the group encounters Nova, a mute human girl whose inability to speak is attributed to a mutated form of the simian flu. Despite initial reluctance, Caesar's compassion leads him to take Nova with them. They also meet Bad Ape, a former zoo chimpanzee who reveals the existence of a hidden military base where the Colonel is stationed. The discovery of the base. The group arrives at the base where they discover that the Colonel has captured Caesar's tribe. The apes are being forced into slave labor to construct a wall meant to protect the Colonel's forces from another human military faction approaching from the north. Caesar infiltrates the base but is captured. The Colonel reveals his motivations. The mutated simian flu is causing humans to lose their intelligence and speech, and he believes eradicating the apes is the only way to preserve humanity's dominance. The Colonel also shares his personal tragedy. He killed his own infected son to prevent the spread of the virus. This act of sacrifice has driven him to madness and paranoia, alienating him from other human factions. Caesar, already haunted by visions of Koba, his former lieutenant who turned against him in Dawn of the Planet of the Apes, struggles with his own growing anger and the parallels between his actions and Koba's. The final battle. With the help of Maurice, Rocket, and Bad Ape, Caesar orchestrates a daring plan to free his imprisoned tribe. Using Nova to smuggle supplies and aid the apes, they manage to overpower their guards. As the northern human forces arrive and attack the Colonel's base, chaos erupts. The apes escape, but Caesar remains behind to confront the Colonel. In a climactic and emotionally charged scene, Caesar finds the Colonel succumbing to the mutated virus which has robbed him of his ability to speak. Rather than kill him, Caesar chooses to let the Colonel end his own life, breaking the cycle of violence. Epilogue: A New Home. The apes escape as the human factions annihilate each other in the ensuing battle. Caesar leads his people to their promised land, a lush and secluded valley beyond the mountains. However, his wounds from the battle prove fatal. Surrounded by his family and tribe, Caesar passes away peacefully, knowing he has secured a future for his people. Prologue: The state of the war. The story picks up 2 years after Dawn of the Planet of the Apes, with tensions between humans and apes at an all-time high. The humans, led by Colonel McCullough and his extremist Alpha Omega faction, believe the survival of humanity depends on wiping out the apes. The simian flu pandemic, which increased apes' intelligence and decimated the human population, has left the world in chaos. The Colonel's mission is to end the perceived threat posed by Caesar and his tribe. The film opens with an intense battle in the dense forests where Caesar's apes have hidden. The Alpha Omega soldiers, aided by treacherous apes called donkeys, launch an ambush. Despite their advanced weaponry, the humans suffer heavy losses due to Caesar's brilliant tactics. After the battle, Caesar orders the release of captured soldiers to send a message to the Colonel: the apes do not want war but will defend themselves if provoked. A leader tested by grief. Caesar's attempts to broker peace are met with tragedy. That night, Alpha Omega soldiers, led by the Colonel himself, infiltrate the apes' hidden refuge. The raid results in the deaths of Caesar's wife Cornelia and his eldest son Blue Eyes. This deeply personal loss shakes Caesar to his core, setting him on a path of vengeance. The once pragmatic leader who prioritized the survival of his tribe above all else begins to wrestle with darker impulses reminiscent of Koba, his former alternate adversary. With his tribe preparing to migrate across the mountains to safety, Caesar makes a fateful decision: he will stay behind and hunt the Colonel. Joined by his closest allies Maurice, the wise orangutan, Rocket, his loyal lieutenant, and Luca, a strong and protective gorilla, Caesar embarks on a perilous journey. Along the way, Caesar is haunted by visions of Koba, whose hatred for humans led to his downfall in Dawn of the Planet of the Apes. These visions serve as a grim reminder of the fine line Caesar walks between justice and revenge. Encounters on the journey. As the group travels, they encounter a young mute human girl in an abandoned village. Initially wary, they discover she has been affected by a new strain of the simian flu which has robbed her of speech. Despite her inability to communicate verbally, she forms a bond with Maurice, who names her Nova after a car emblem he finds in the village. Nova's presence challenges Caesar's growing cynicism as her innocence and vulnerability serve as a reminder of humanity's complexity. The group also meets Bad Ape, a quirky, timid chimpanzee who escaped captivity in a zoo. Bad Ape reveals that he, like Caesar's tribe, gained intelligence from the simian flu. Living in isolation for years, Bad Ape is initially reluctant to help but eventually guides them to a deserted military base where the colonel is reportedly stationed. The prison camp. Upon reaching the base, Caesar and his companions discover a horrific truth: the colonel has captured the apes who stayed behind, including Caesar's youngest son Cornelius. The apes are being forced to construct a massive wall around the base intended to protect the colonel's forces from an impending assault by another human military faction from the north. Determined to free his tribe, Caesar infiltrates the base but is captured by the colonel. In a chilling confrontation, the colonel reveals his motivations. The mutated strain of the simian flu is not only robbing humans of their speech but also regressing their cognitive abilities, effectively turning them into primitive beings. The colonel, believing this mutation signals humanity's extinction, has adopted a brutal survival strategy, exterminating apes and executing infected humans, including his own son. This conversation is a turning point for Caesar, who sees the colonel as a mirror of his own potential downfall. The colonel's obsession with survival at any cost and his willingness to sacrifice even his loved ones reflect the path Caesar risks taking if consumed by vengeance. A plan of liberation. While imprisoned, Caesar endures physical and psychological torture, but his resolve remains unbroken. With the help of Maurice, Rocket, Luca, Nova, and Bad Ape, a daring plan is set in motion to free the apes. Nova plays a pivotal role, sneaking into the camp to deliver supplies to the captives. The apes use these tools to stage a coordinated uprising, overpowering their guards and escaping during the chaos of the northern faction's assault on the base. The final confrontation between Caesar and the colonel is both climactic and subdued. Caesar finds the colonel in his quarters, dying from the mutated virus. The once dominant leader is now a frail, helpless figure, unable to speak. Rather than kill him, Caesar hands the colonel a gun, allowing him to take his own life. This act of mercy signifies Caesar's rejection of the cycle of hatred and vengeance that has defined his journey. The Exodus. As the northern military forces obliterate the colonel's faction, the apes escape through a secret tunnel. The human armies, consumed by their own war, are too distracted to pursue them. Caesar leads his people across the mountains to a promised land, a lush valley where they can live in peace. However, Caesar has been gravely wounded during the escape. As the apes celebrate their arrival in their new home, Caesar collapses. Surrounded by Maurice and his tribe, Caesar shares a final moment of peace, knowing he has secured a future for his people. Maurice vows to ensure that Caesar's son Cornelius grows up knowing the legacy of his father's courage and sacrifice. Themes and legacy. War for the Planet of the Apes is a story of leadership, morality, and the cost of conflict. Caesar's journey parallels the struggles of historical leaders forced to make impossible choices in times of war. His internal battle between vengeance and justice, as well as his ultimate decision to prioritize the survival of his people over personal revenge, cements his legacy as a complex and heroic figure. The film also explores the blurred line between humanity and savagery. The colonel's descent into madness and Caesar's moments of moral conflict illustrate how both species grapple with their capacity for violence and compassion. Nova's presence as a bridge between humans and apes offers a glimmer of hope for coexistence, even as the larger conflict suggests such harmony may be impossible. Conclusion. War for the Planet of the Apes concludes Caesar's trilogy with a poignant and emotionally resonant ending. His journey from a young, uncertain leader to a self-sacrificing savior reflects the series' overarching narrative of growth, loss, and redemption. By securing a future for his tribe, Caesar ensures the apes rise to dominance while preserving the hope for a more peaceful world. Maurice promises to tell Caesar's son Cornelius of his father's bravery and sacrifice, ensuring that Caesar's legacy will live on. The film ends with the apes beginning a new chapter of their lives free from human oppression. If you enjoy watching this video, then subscribe to Angel Recaps for the latest movies explanation.